Well, let's go now to Paul Kelly, Editor-at-Large at the Australian newspaper, back with us this morning. Paul, very good to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's just pick up on the economy there. Look, we heard the Minister maintaining the line that the government's got stability and certainty, also a fair degree of confidence, I thought, in a return to trend growth in the next 12 months. What do you make of how the government's positioning itself on the economy?
I think, David, the judgments about the economy at the moment are very finely balanced, and there are different views. I think the government's approach so far has been sensible. What it's doing is it's assessing the indicators over the next several weeks to see what the signs are. But I think the government does need to be working behind the scenes on proactive measures which may well be needed depending upon whether growth is too sluggish. There are different assessments. We know that there are strong headwinds internationally. We know that domestically household consumption is weak, business investment is weak. We've got the problems of the drought. But as the Finance Minister pointed out, we did have this optimistic remark made by the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Phil Lowe, a few weeks ago, that he expects trend growth to be returned in 12 months' time. Now, we don't face an economic emergency, we don't face a budget emergency, but what we do face is the prospect of sluggish growth for some time. And if that's the case, then that will mean that the government's growth strategy does need to be further supplemented with more policy initiatives. And that will be the big challenge facing the Morrison government over the next several months, if the indicators point that way.
Yeah, and look, clearly the first priority when it comes to further measures will be the drought. In fact, before it sees those next set of economic figures, there will be more for the drought by the sounds of it. What do you think, though, about how this is playing out internally in the coalition and the angst on the part of some in the National Party?
Well, what we've seen this last week, David, is the first significant rift since the election between the Liberals and the Nationals. This is over the drought, where Scott Morrison has clearly indicated that action on the drought will be a priority for him. We saw a push from a very agitated National Party backbench, and there are two things they want. They put up in lights the figure of $1.3 billion that you just asked Matthias Cormann about. So they want a lot of extra funding going to farmers and going to regional communities. But second, and this is critical, what they want is they want this to be branded in terms of the National Party. They want National Party ownership and credit for this next round of initiatives. Now, we know that there will be more announcements from the Morrison government about the drought. There will be more money coming. But the interesting thing is, if this is less than $1.3 billion, and I would imagine it will be less than that, then it won't meet the test set by these National Party backbenchers. And the interesting thing to watch for is, how will the announcement be branded? And clearly the Prime Minister will be front and centre, but so the National Party must be front and centre. They're very agitated about Pauline Hanson. They're very agitated about Hanson getting credit for rural initiatives. They're under pressure from media commentators, and also they're under pressure from the Liberals.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking Matthias Cormann about the mechanism of spending this money, as the Nationals have suggested, is it would give the Nationals pretty much, in most cases, absolute control over how it's doled out. The Mayor, the local state MP and the federal MP in each drought area are most likely going to be National Party figures, so they would be the ones deciding how the money's spent. I'm not saying this can't be done with a few more checks and balances in there, but you know, it's notable, isn't it, that the National Party want complete control over how that money is spent in each local area.
Well, what we're seeing now is a big debate emerging about the politics of the drought, and the Nationals are certainly agitated, and of course this drought may go on for a considerable amount of time. So the Nationals want to ensure that they have a sense of control, but they want a degree of ownership. They want ownership of some of these initiatives. Now, this is going to bring them into a degree of tension, I think, with the Liberals and with the way Scott Morrison puts this new package together.
Just finally, Paul, Anthony Albanese, a few tensions with the unions, inevitably, and I don't know if much of that really hurts him in relation to backing in the free trade agreements, pushing out John Setka and so on. But within the Labor Party, a few grumbles about how he's going as leader. I suppose this was inevitable after that, shock election loss for many in the Labor Party. But do you think this is anything serious yet for Anthony Albanese?
Well, I don't think there's anything serious yet, and grumbles about the leadership, I think, are inevitable. I think what a lot of people underestimate is the extent of challenge and what I think is a crisis facing the Labor Party. I mean, Labor is still shell-shocked, and there's no agreement within the party about precisely what it ought to do. Clearly, the party's got to move back towards the centre. Anthony Albanese has recognised that. But there are very significant divisions about what this means, particularly in relation to climate policy. It looks as though there will be movement in relation to climate. Clearly, there's going to be significant movement in relation to economic policy and tax. But it's going to take a considerable amount of time to sort this out. Now, it's easy to say, and it's probably true, that Anthony Albanese should have been more decisive to this point. But that is a very difficult task when there's no internal agreement about where the party goes and about the extent to which it's got to reposition to the centre. I think, frankly, it's going to be hard for Labor to reposition in a policy sense as far as it needs to go back to the centre and remain united. This is going to be a really significant challenge. It's going to be a daunting task for Anthony Albanese as leader, and there's no doubt the grumbling will simply get worse.